The quiet tax of being a woman in the workforce, and the data rarely tells the full story.
Most people are going to their CEO and saying, hey, I need a day off because my period pain is so bad, right? Because that just continues the narrative for men in power to say this is why women should be in control and at the board seats. You're sitting in your desk working at 70% capacity because you don't have the days to take off. You don't want to be that girl, but you're not performing at 100% capacity because of your menstrual pain. We truly believe that women deserve the opportunity to continue to live their lives through menstruation and to do that in a better way.
That's why Amy Gaston and the work of OhmBody is so powerful. OhmBody is not only building a new category of medicine, they are giving voice to the things we've been taught to suppress. And in today's last episode of season 1 of RedefineHER, we are going there. For our season finale episode of RedefineHER, this episode isn't just about innovation. It's about burnout and bold pivots and believing in the deep intelligence of the female body, because it is quite intelligent. Welcome to RedefineHER, Amy. It's so great to have you.
Thanks, Brenda, for having me. We're so excited to be here.
Most definitely. I want to hear about your journey. Tell me high level how you got to be here in this position as a VP of Strategic Growth for OhmBody.
I always think that's an interesting question. I have such a twisted pathway here. I think life is never linear. I set out and was like, I'm going to work for a Femtech company someday, mostly because I'm old enough that Femtech was not a term when I was at university. I've been with OhmBody since January. And prior to that, I was with a VC firm that happens to be the Series A lead in investment for the company SparkBow, which is the parent company of OhmBody. And so I spent some time with them as a chief of staff. And after leaving there and doing some consulting work, when SparkBow Medical's founders, who are amazing, but all 3 men, decided they wanted to launch a women's wellness division of their company, they really thought, we should probably find a woman to help us do that, which is so great. And so through a series of connections and some of our investors and different things and some gentlemen I'd worked for, they really felt like I might fit the bills. I have the privilege of really representing the strategic initiatives for OhmBody itself as we go to market and as we really reach as many women's lives as we can. And I get to do that and tell the incredible stories of our clinical researchers and our engineering team. Prior to this, I worked in brand marketing. So I worked for a large lifestyle brand called Magnolia based in Waco, which is where my husband and I live. And then prior to that, I actually worked in college athletics. And so it's a really interesting pathway because you hear what we're doing at OhmBody. You'll see some of the through lines of what those experiences really taught me about storytelling, about people's experiences, about how to build brand affinity, how to have people buy in at the university level, why I love college athletics is, you fall in love with the team because players leave every 4 years. It's unlike professional teams where a player like Dirk, if you're a Mavs fan, he's stayed for years and years and years. So you're a Dirks fan. You're not necessarily a Mavs fan per se, whatever that might be. But at the college level, you're really selling a brand and a brand experience. And so as we're launching this women's wellness division, or we've launched it in this product, the beauty of OhmBody is that we're more than just a device. We're not just selling a device that obviously helps women, but we're really here to have a conversation around the destigmatization of menstrual care, the understanding that women know more about the anatomy of frogs than they do their own body and how it works. And that's a conversation that has to change. And so really beginning to build a brand that has a voice in the space to advocate for women who don't know how to find language for that for themselves. And then just the education piece so that we can better, not just our current group of women in this generation, but I think about my 13-year-old niece who just started menstruating in December. She's an entire generation of young girls that are going to demand better and going to want more than just simply pharmaceutical solutions to heavy menstrual bleeding or severe cramping and pain associated with period pain. And that's why we exist, and we're really excited about it. So you'll see some through lines to that story for sure.
Amazing. Let's actually dive into OhmBody. So as I was doing some research to have this conversation today, I learned some astonishing facts, which maybe they're not so astonishing, but over 80% of women experience menstrual pain. I could say that myself. And 1 in 5 admit it interferes with daily life. Globally, period pain causes, which this number seems shy to me, but 9 days of lost productivity per woman per year.
8.9 is the number if we want to get technical. But we also agree with that because those are just women who are reporting that they are missing due to menstrual pain, not women in general. We call that absenteeism, women who are missing work. So most people aren't going to their CEO and saying, hey, I need a day off because my period pain is so bad. Because that just continues the narrative for men in power to say this is why women shouldn't be in the board seats. But that doesn't, for us, represent the presenteeism, meaning you're sitting in your desk working at 70% capacity because you don't have the days to take off. You don't want to be that girl, but you're figuring it out, but you're not performing at 100% capacity because of your menstrual pain. So yeah, those are just scratching surface things around menstrual pain. Specifically, and that doesn't even address the heavy menstrual bleeding. So 1 in 3 women are heavy menstrual bleeders. But again, similar to the 8.9 days, we think that number's underrepresented. One, because most women don't even know they're heavy menstrual bleeders. So yeah, if you're bleeding over 80 milliliters in a single cycle, so that's just over a quarter cup of blood. If you're bleeding more than that in a cycle, you are a heavy menstrual bleeder and should probably be talking to your doctor. But I say that in rooms full of women all the time, Brenda, and they look at me and you can see their brain starting to tick through. How much did I actually bleed last month or this last cycle? But if you think about it, if we so very rarely talk about menstrual bleeding and how much. So when you go to your gynecologist, they're going to ask you, when was the last time you menstruated and for how long? That's what they ask you. But they're not asking you, tell me how much blood you're losing. Tell me how many tampons you use in a day. Tell me how many pads you change out. How many times you have to dump your menstrual disc. Those questions aren't being asked by most doctors. Some of that's improving. And so if you're not even aware that you have a problem, then you don't even know that you need a solution. And so that's part of that conversation around educating. Sorry, I jumped right in there on the stats. We are really passionate about stats.
But I appreciate that because I think it's a lack of education or awareness. And even when you think of this, as you mentioned, your niece starting her period at 13, women are starting periods younger and younger. And that's also leading to increased missed school days for young women. But they don't have the words to explain why is this happening. They don't understand if this is natural or isn't natural. And it's because historically we haven't had that. We haven't had the chance to put our finger on it. And when we go to a doctor, you're there for 10 minutes with your practitioner.
If you're lucky.
Yes.
If you're lucky.
Totally. And I actually was on an airplane yesterday and I was speaking with a physician and she was like, I don't want to have MAs or PAs because I'm at risk for losing my job. And I'm like, yeah, but we need PAs and MAs because we need that time with them. We don't have enough time with our doctors.
Yeah, someone's got to hear our story. And our doctors are overworked, especially in the OBGYN. They're some of the lowest paid doctors. Their reimbursements are lower than most other doctors in spaces. And I listened to a podcast the other day talking about the shortage of OBGYNs. Fewer and fewer are choosing to go through that route because the workload is high and the pay rate is low, which is just crazy.
Totally. And I've gone through in women's health program and their mini MBA with Jody Newhouser and Rachel Braun Cheryl. I might get her last name mixed up. In any case, they are advocates of education and the system is so complex. Boiling the ocean is definitely challenging, but there are different entities that are doing something about it. So that's really where OhmBody is also shifting the paradigm. NSAIDs and hormonal birth control, they don't always work for everyone. And sometimes they come with side effects and people don't like that.
And risks that we don't fully understand.
I mean, we haven't even discussed the risks.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So tell me about OhmBody.
Yeah, OhmBody, as you described earlier, is a neurostimulation device that targets the auricular branches transcutaneously, which is just a fancy way of saying we target the branches around the ear of the trigeminal and vagus nerves, and we do that through your skin. So there's no penetration. We're not poking you. There's nothing that gets inserted in you. It's literally 2 sticky pads that sit around your ear and stick with medical grade adhesive. That's basically the very large portion of that. So what we do is by targeting the trigeminal and vagus nerve. So the trigeminal nerve is associated with pain management. It's how your body regulates pain out. And then your vagus nerve, she's the only cranial nerve that leaves your brain and touches every major organ in your body and then signals all the way back to your brain. She's sort of the hot it girl. Everyone's talking about optimizing your vagus nerve. How do we do this? And that's based on years and years of research. It's not like the vagus nerve suddenly got trendy. For millennia, acupuncturists have been targeting that. And then for us, Spark Biomedical has been around since 2018, and we've been using this technology in other use case scenarios. So we have an FDA cleared device on stress management and balancing the autonomic nervous system for individuals who are withdrawing from opioids. So when you're opioid dependent and you're withdrawing, one of the reasons that your body is panicking is you're in a hyper fight or flight sense. Most people don't go back to drugs because they crave drugs. They go back to drugs because they don't want to feel the way that they're feeling as they withdraw, because your body's in this hyper stress. And so in that case, we're able to balance the autonomic nervous system in such a way that helps people come down off that stress so that they can manage their way through withdrawal without additional drugs. So we've been working in neurostimulation for a while now. So our co-founders, really smart guys, they're working in the opioid space. They're doing their thing. When they decided, this is doing something interesting to blood loss regulation, they were like, oh, this is curious. The Feinstein Institute had been doing about 20 years of research in blood loss regulation around the vagus nerve. So they call it the neural tourniquet, but they had only ever done animal studies. They'd not been able to replicate blood loss reduction in humans, mostly because it's unethical to cause a traumatic bleeding episode in humans in order to then test. There's some things that the IRB isn't really for. So the Feinstein Institutes told our co-founders, hey, listen, if you can figure out a way to test this in humans, we'll license the tech to you. And they were like, okay, yeah, that's cool. So they go ahead and license it. And they're like, we can figure this out in humans. And so they were talking to hematologists. How do we do this? They were at a conference, and a female hematologist came to them and said, a great place for you to test this would be women, because women bleed every month. And the three guys looked at each other. They're like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. And specifically, she was thinking about women with von Willebrand disease. It's one of the most common bleeding disorders among women. And for these women, they can lose up to a liter of blood every time they menstruate, which is a tremendous amount of blood loss. So think about transfusions and anemia, iron deficiency, all the things that come along with that.
We have
4 liters, 4 liters, 4.5 if you're a large woman on any given singular cycle. And these women are on their periods 10 to 20 days, depending on their severity of their VWD. So it's terrible, and it's life altering. We spoke to women in our clinical study that would spend 3 days in bed because they physically couldn't get out of bed. If you think about these women that are working hourly jobs, part-time jobs, administrative work.
36 days.
That's right. And nobody has 36 days of vacation a year. It's just not usually traditional.
Especially you don't want to take your vacation to deal with your period.
That's right. So they were like, okay, let's do this. So they did a small pilot study in the fall of last year, which was actually just published a couple of weeks ago in Frontiers in Medicine. So we can certainly leave the link.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, let's test it. So they took 16 women. Half the women had von Willebrand disease. Half the women had idiopathic heavy menstrual bleeding, meaning they had heavy menstrual bleeding, but for no known structural cause. We just wanted to see, could we regulate blood loss? Could we affect this? And the results were really tremendous. What we saw in the study across the 16 women, we saw on average a 55% reduction in the amount of blood loss during menstruation.
Wow, that is impressive. And that's just with neurostimulation.
Neurostimulating 2 hours every day they menstruated. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
We saw a 20% reduction in the number of days they were on their period. So you're thinking women who are bleeding 10 plus days, taking away 20% of those days is, again, life-changing, transformative for them.
It's like getting your life back.
Absolutely. And that's the response we got from people when we chatted with them after the study. They were like, I felt human again. That's a real thing. So our founders were like, okay, the blood loss mechanism works. But what they weren't expecting were all the other results that we got. So on the side of PMS and painful periods. And so we saw 40+% reduction in the amount of cramping women were experiencing, a 40+% reduction in gastric upset, a 30+% improvement in mood stability, plus decreases in anxiety, sleeplessness, and cravings. And then across the cohort, while those are all really impressive, so some women had a tremendous blood loss reduction because they were so far from the baseline of a PVAC score, and maybe a moderate cramping reduction. We saw someone with tremendous cramping reduction and maybe a more moderate blood loss reduction because they were closer to that baseline. But across the board, what we saw was an increase in quality of life score across the board, which is really the whole point. So OhmBody's tagline is because life doesn't stop when you start. And we truly believe that. We truly believe that women deserve the opportunity to continue to live their lives through menstruation and to do that in a better way. Women for millennia have been living through their periods because that's what we do, because we're strong and we're brilliant. And we just say, all right, well, this is what it is. And so we're going. But we know there's a better way. And so the results were really exciting. And so our co-founders were like, I think we have a menstrual care product, which is great. And so OhmBody was really born. But let's talk about the mechanisms and how it actually works, because it sounds a little like, what are you talking about? How does this work?
Yes. Because it is a pretty significant breakthrough in terms of what is being done for our bodies and how you're stimulating your body to naturally respond more effectively.
That's right. So when we talk about the blood loss reduction mechanism, we're actually targeting your splenic nerve from your vagus nerve. So by stimulating your vagus nerve, we send signals down to your spleen. Your spleen holds anywhere between 20 to 30% of your platelets, depending on your body at any given point. Platelets are designed to help you clot. So when you cut your finger, the reason you don't bleed out is platelets showed up, they clotted, they did their job, kept you from bleeding out. That same mechanism is happening in your body all the time.
Everywhere. Sure.
Internally, externally. And it absolutely happens when you have this shedding of your uterine wall. These tiny tears that happen and all the things that have to happen in order for us to be healthy. And for some women, they bleed a lot out of that process because their body doesn't maybe clot as effectively or their platelets aren't as effective. And so what we're able to do is by signaling the splenic nerve, we're actually able to prime platelets in such a way that they show up and they clot faster, stronger, and hold longer. We are not causing a clot because we're not activating the platelets. We're not actually saying, hey, platelet, clot. We're not doing that. All we're doing is preparing it in such a way that says, hey, when the body calls you to the point of injury, which in this case is the shedding of your uterine wall, you're going to show up and you're going to clot more effectively. And so we see this average of 55% reduction in blood loss. We're not keeping you from menstruating. We're not keeping you from bleeding or ovulating because those are things that your body naturally needs to do. Not just to be fertile and to have babies, but just to be a healthy woman. We're learning more and more that healthy menstruation is a sign of all kinds of things that help our body function at the best rate that we can. And so that's the one side of what we do, which is really, really cool. And the other part is every doctor you talk to will say, you want to keep as much of your own blood in your body as possible because that's necessary. Like you need to keep blood in your body. And so we're able to do that. The other side of what we do on the mechanism is that by our blend of frequency targeting the trigeminal and vagus nerve, we're actually able to balance the autonomic nervous system. So when you're menstruating, your body is in trauma. We don't have to think about that because we're like, oh, it's menstruation, it happens. But your body's experiencing a traumatic event, the losing of this blood. And so your body's sending all these resources. And in the case of women who have heavy menstrual bleeding, it's a significant amount of trauma. I like to say this, if you were to bleed as much as you do from your uterus when you're heavy menstrual bleeder from any other part of your body, you'd be in the hospital receiving treatment.
Right?
You just would. And nobody thinks about that because it comes out of the uterus. They're like, that's normal. And I like to say what's common is not necessarily normal. But your body, it's just saying, there's a moment, we're doing it. It does know the difference, but it's still responding in ways of sending resources to your body in order to help you manage that. And so what that causes is your body to go into hyper fight or flight. So your pathetic tone, which are your fight or flight tones, are in overdrive. Because your body's responding, and that's our way of protecting ourselves. It's a naturally occurring thing. But when your body is overstimulating your sympathetic tone, that's when you get the cramping, the pain, the sleeplessness, the anxiety. So we know all those things. So what we're able to do is through the stimulation that we do, we're actually able to raise the parasympathetic tone, which is your rest and relax tone. And so what essentially we do is to help the body menstruate and experience the act of menstruation in a more relaxed state.
So neutralizing the stressor.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We're neutralizing the stressors. What I love about OhmBody is that we're not altering what your body already naturally does. We're just giving it the tools to do it better. And we're doing that non-hormonally, non-invasively, and with no drugs. And so we're just empowering your body to be healthier in her response and smarter in response to something that your body needs to be able to do. It's just that not all of our bodies do it well. So we all know the one girl who's like, I have really light periods. I bleed for 4.5 days and I barely have
right.
That's so great. I'm so glad your autonomic nervous system knows how to balance you.
Right. Because you're the 1 in 40. That's
right. Or 400 maybe. Truly. And even in that, I have girlfriends that are like, oh, Amy, I only cramp for 2 days. It's not bad. I'm like, but wouldn't it be nice not to cramp at all? But we've been trained and not brainwashed, but just triggered in this fact of like, I'm a woman and this is my burden to bear. And if I can do this, it's this armor that we wear around us to say, no, I'm good. I'm tough. And I'm a tough girl. Listen, I'm a former college athlete. I've been through injury. I've had surgeries. My pain tolerance is pretty high. But it's so nice to know that I don't actually have to live in that state. And all of the resources that would normally go to helping me balance and trying to get through my period pain can go to things that actually matter.
Right, exactly. CH2 Solutions believes technology should do more than just keep up. It should move business forward. Through nearshore solutions, CH2 delivers the technology and talent that simplify complexity, fuel growth, and unlock new opportunities. CH2 Solutions is proud to sponsor RedefineHER, a community built on bold ideas and fearless leadership. CH2 Solutions doesn't just deliver technology. CH2 delivers possibilities, redefining the future together. I'm curious, have you guys identified any reasons behind why more and more women are experiencing such heavy cycles?
We have not specifically, but there's a lot of people that have. It's just our environmental causes right now, whether you want to say microplastics or the stress of the day or the fact that we never rest. I was in London last week with my husband and I still worked. I mean, my phone was still going off. London's only 6 hours ahead of Texas. And so I was still taking time when it was supposed to be my holiday. I always laugh because the Europeans will leave out of office notice for a month and not think twice about it. Be like, boop. But as Americans, we don't do that.
We don't do that.
We don't do that. I met with a media girl and while I was there and she said, oh, you're on holiday. Let's not do this. I was like, a true American. I'm never actually on holiday. But I think you can make it environmental. You can take it out the foods, the pesticides. I think there's a conglomerate that add to why our bodies are responding the way they are currently. I think about my mom's generation and probably your mom's generation. My mom had a hysterectomy when I was 12. And we've never actually talked about why. And even in the state, I don't remember that she was a heavy bleeder. I don't remember anything. The only thing I remember is her going through menopause and my dad actually thinking, has my wife gone crazy? But other than that, we never had a conversation. I didn't start bleeding until I was 17 and my mom bought me pads to get ready. But I walked out and said, I think I've started menstruating. She's like, great. Do you need help? I'm like, no. And that was the end of our conversation around my menstrual education. So even that, I would say that while it feels like we're bleeding more, I wonder how many generations back also bled this much. We just don't know because nobody talked about it.
Oh, yeah, totally. And then you think of all of the other associated, say, endometriosis or PCOS, all kinds of different diagnoses that women do experience. And of course, they're all coming from something that is not right in our body. And we've normalized it over generations. We have just said, well, that's just what it is.
The curse of Eve.
Yes, exactly. So with OhmBody, what is a question that you feel like people should ask more frequently? Because really knowing the answer to that is transformative, mind-blowing.
The amount of bleeding. What we would hope is that women felt more empowered to go to their OB-GYN and demand more than 5 minutes to say, I need to know if what I'm experiencing is right for my body. Not common, not what my mom also experienced and my aunt also experienced. Is this right for my body? And is there something happening to me during menstruation and during my overall cycle that is actually contributing to a health factor that I'm not even aware of yet? And can we actually do that? If I could wish anything for all women, is that they felt empowered to be able to ask the questions and to have the language to say, I'm just curious if what I'm experiencing is right.
Yes. I had Mary Byerly on with Hologic. They just got acquired. And I mean, she is so behind the education piece of all of this too. It's just, if you're replacing your tampon every couple of hours, that's too much.
If you're bleeding through more than 6 or 7 tampons in a day, it's too much.
Yes. So talk to your practitioners, ladies. If it's your daughter, your sister, cousin, girlfriend, get help because there are options out there.
And if you have a practitioner that's dismissing you, find another practitioner. With the world of telehealth now and so many great companies doing it right out there, there's other options. And yes, we always want to be seen in person and those things, but they can help you find a resource locally and then serve as your in-between person until you can find a practitioner who can help you. And I think that's the other part for us. We recognize that not every woman has access to great health care,
Exactly.
great practitioners or practitioners who are staying up with the current trend. I grew up in a town of 7,000 people and the closest OB was 80 miles away. And while my general practitioner was great for a lot of things, he never examined me, ever. And for women who didn't have the resources to drive the 80 miles to find an OB, you're screwed.
You're stuck. Exactly. I was at Health in Vegas just this past month, and you were in London for Women's Health Week. It's amazing to see how many passionate, driven founders there are, how many people are showing up in Femtech, in women's health to drive change. And one of the things that was mentioned on stage in one of the many presentations was mice don't menstruate. And so if you think of years of research studies that have been done on mice, you can't measure how mice are bleeding every month.
Absolutely. And men don't menstruate. So let's talk about birth control.
Right.
The birth control our generation was on was studied and researched and tested on men, white middle-aged men, and they don't ovulate.
Right. Right.
I don't know a man that ovulates.
And then you think of the research that had been done on women going through menopause. It's like, well, you're on the other side of all of this. It's not the same. So, from digital tools and wearables to AI, diagnostics, the innovation that is taking place right now is absolutely stunning. But to be real, founders in this space are wearing so many hats and they're showing up every day as an advocate, as a fundraiser, as an educator, as an operator, as the tester, as the doer. They're doing everything. And it can lead to burnout. What's the hardest hat that you've had to wear on this journey as being part of this strategic team taking OhmBody to the next level?
Oh gosh, there are a lot of hats that I wear. So in addition to being the strategic lead for OhmBody, I also serve as the face and voice. So I do this and sit on stages and sit in Instagram videos. It's funny. We were at a conference and this woman walked by. She goes, "Wait, you're the girl on Instagram." I was like, that is weird because I'm not really an influencer type of individual.
Right.
So I do wear quite a few hats and am really fortunate we're a smaller company. And so our CEO does rely on me in spaces of, hey, can you meet with this board member? Hey, can you meet with this investor? And so I've been able to do some of that, which has been really great. And then I think when you care about a company the way that we do, I just never sleep and wake up thinking, how do we make sure this exists and that we get this to as many women as we can? How do we return a fund? We closed a Series A at 15 million in May, and we're working on a convertible note now. And so that's people's money that we need to get back at some point. So
Right.
there's a lot in that. And so I think the hardest hat I wear, one of the most challenging, is honestly managing all of our partnerships because they range. It's interesting. We are a wearable for sure, but we differ as a wearable in that we're not tracking your data. So our device doesn't track anything from you. We're not a period tracker. We don't do any of those things. It's just a device to be worn, but we're the then what? So we do want to partner with wearables. We want to partner with telehealth platforms to say, hey, offer us as an option for women with heavy menstrual bleeding or severe painful periods. We want to be with doctors, but we're also direct to consumers, to the everyday woman to say, hey, we're an option for you. And here's how you do that. So when you're managing all of those ways, strategic ways to do that, and the partnerships range from affiliates to true partnerships to distributors, it can be a little overwhelming, to be quite frank.
Totally. I've been in recruiting for 15 years and I've recruited across health tech and manufacturing and fintech, various different industries. And similar, the conversation is so and so does XYZ, but in this industry, in this industry, in this industry, those partnerships are all different. And it's knowing their language, speaking the same language, and literally being in the room, so to speak. There's so much to know. And for you with these different partners, it's a different language.
Absolutely. And our device is a ready out of the box usage. It's truly a direct to consumer. We want everyone to be able to open it, put it on, and it to be really, really simple. And it is really simple. We have a few guidelines, but for the most part, you're not having to figure out where your nerve is. How long do I wear it? How much dosage do I do? We say put it on and wear it for as long as you need it. We recommend 2 hours, but you can wear it longer, and there are no known adverse reactions to that. We've taken the hard science out of it for the everyday consumer. But we still have doctors who want to be trained on it and want to learn it. So then we have to figure out, okay, what is that? How we talk to influencer partnerships is different than how we talk to doctor partnerships. So to your point, it's totally that. And I laugh. People always ask me, what's an average day for you? And I was like, I don't even know what that is, because every conversation, every block of conversation is a different one every single day. But it's fun and I love it. One, it's an easy thing to be passionate about, helping women experience better menstruation. But number two, I love to have lots of irons in the fire. And this job is that every day.
Totally. And I think it pulls in, as you had shared about your background, all of your different experiences to really assimilate all of those in this role. It's a perfect meeting of all of your past expertise thrown into one cauldron.
That's right. I think about people who truly are able to capture skills out of each experience they have is that every industry can be taught. Again, I've been a high school volleyball coach. I've been a teacher. I've worked in college athletics. I've worked in brand lifestyling, consulted for a cannabis company. I know this much about cannabis. Any subject matter can be taught. It's really about the underlying skill set of how to manage, how to have relationships, how to project out, how to foresee out the future. Those are the skills that I encourage. I do a lot of mentoring, and I tell a lot of young Baylor students that go work in an industry that sounds interesting to you because you're going to learn skill sets. Just go learn something.
Yeah. It's like investing in that passion and that education, whatever that happens to be, and then being able to apply that in
That's right.
different sectors. Christina Farr, who is a big voice in the women's health world, she had recently pointed out that cost isn't talked about enough and costs are rising. But without CPT codes and reimbursement pathways, R&D often doesn't pay off. So what is your take on the current economics of women's health innovation, especially after the conversations that you had in London? Tell me more about what your thoughts are around the current economics, the financial landscape.
For us, OhmBody right now is direct-to-consumer wellness device. While we are FSA, HSA eligible, they're truly just dollars. And we have payment plans and things, but we're not reimbursable. And I'm not sure we'll ever go down that pathway, which is a whole other conversation. But we want to make it as accessible to women as possible. Because not every woman has insurance. If you have insurance, reimbursement is great. But if you don't, then
Right.
it makes it extremely expensive for you to do for an insured product. So that's one side of it. But when we think about R&D and we think about what the investment is, it's tough out there for Femtech right now. Less than 2% of all investment last year was given to women's health, just in general. I'm not
Shocking.
less than 2% for half the world's population, which is
Right.
just an insane statistic to talk about. We have been really fortunate that as a division of a parent company who is already doing research, I don't think we're as exposed as some other Femtech companies out there who don't have an overall arching parent company to help raise up the funds that are needed. I want to be transparent that we've been really, really fortunate. We're also really fortunate that our clinical team and engineering team, the vast majority of our clinical work has been funded through grants. We have over $22 million in non-dilutive capital that have been in our research. So a lot of what our clinical team has done is not taking from investment dollars. And so we're really, really fortunate. We have an in-house clinical team that just knocks it out of the park. And what I love about OhmBody and Spark is that because we have an in-house clinical team, our research is our own, or we're not having to point to other people's studies, which I know a lot of femtech companies, because they can't afford the research it takes to make that is having to do that. And so I want to recognize our privilege and say we're in a unique position compared to a lot of others. But as I sat in conversations at Women's Health and I listened to the woes of some of the founders in there, they need $150,000 to close something and can't get the capital to do that without going and borrowing it or whatever. It's a tough space while we are getting more and more female investors and female-centric investments and even big-time investment VC firms that were at Women's Health. We're talking about they have entire women's health divisions. It's still just a fraction of what their overall firm is actually doing. And again, it's not fast enough yet. We always talk about people investing in research in things that matter to them. And for a long time, men sat in those seats and held the dollars. And that's why women's health is not niche. So for us, yeah, I think it's a hard space out there. And I don't envy founders who are literally just trying to scour less than $500,000 in investment in order to go to their next steps.
Beautiful that you did share this at the beginning, but I will repeat it because I think it's very impactful. Your company, OhmBody, found out of 3 men realizing we can make this happen. But how beautiful is it that they are using their privilege and their power to help women? They're allies in this effort. And even though Spark is in terms of neurostimulation and the greater picture, this could be used in so many different ways. When you look at the niche market, quote unquote, that we are in, having a device like this to specifically help women and empower companies, what a blessing, what a gift entirely.
You called them allies, and they truly are. They're also dads of daughters only. And so they very much are like, no, no. Our 2 science officer has 2 little girls, a 9 and a 12-year-old. I was on a call with him once, and they're like, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, we brought you something." And I don't mind, whatever. And they brought him a stuffed uterus, a stuffy uterus. And I thought, yeah, you're raising the right kind of women.
Yes.
And his wife is a power boss. She's phenomenal. He would say that too. So, Nagin, shout out to you. And again, they could have just said, we're releasing a device and just done it. And that would have been fine. But they are absolutely committed. No CEO I've ever worked for has known when I menstruate. That's just not a thing. But we talk about menstruation around the table, and we talk about symptoms and things we're feeling. And my CEO often knows when I'm menstruating. And it's just a part of our daily conversation. And so I'm so grateful for individuals who are like, this is about helping people, and women
Yes.
are people.
We are people, right. And again, 51% of the population, and every single woman, for the most part, has a pretty regular
Yeah.
period. And
Yeah.
it's awful.
Yeah,
For the
it
most
really
part.
is. It really is. It's uncomfortable if you're of that mindset that the women's body is so beautiful, and it is, but it doesn't mean that it's less messy or that there's not things about it that are really not
Right. It
fun.
can be both. And
Yeah, both
yes.
and. Yeah, it can be
Yes.
both and. I agree.
OhmBody. Every period looks a little different, but pain, heavy flow, and low energy shouldn't define your week. OhmBody delivers gentle, wearable neurostimulation designed to support a more balanced menstrual cycle. By stimulating key nerve pathways, it helps reduce the intensity of cramps, support lighter menstrual flow, and more steady energy so you can stay present in your day. No pills, no hormones, just a smarter way to support your cycle. It's simple to wear, easy to use, and fits seamlessly into your routine, so your period doesn't have to slow you down. Visit ohmbody.com.
So you guys have said you're not just solving for cramps, but you're really opening a door to a whole new category of medicine. Tell us what's on the horizon.
The next thing we're going to do is a pivotal study starting in February. We got a Welcome Leap grant. We're one of 13 institutions to receive the funding and the only non-research institution on that list.
Amazing.
It's based out of the UK. Melinda Gates's foundation just gave another $100 million just to the overall
Amazing.
Welcome Leap for women's health, not specific to menstruation, but just in general. So they're in good company for sure, and have been doing some incredible things. That grant will fund a pivotal study starting in February of 80 women, nationwide pivotal study. So we do a decentralized clinical model. So devices are sent to women in their homes to be able to use again, because we want to create a product that's easy to use, doesn't require a doctor, doesn't require doctor's visits. And so it'll be half women with von Willebrand disease, so 40 women with von Willebrand disease. And then the other half will actually be adolescent heavy menstrual bleeders, so girls ages 14 to 17, which is really exciting for us. And that will go after our FDA indication for heavy menstrual bleeding specifically, which is great. So that will be the first check on that. Then down the pathway, we want to understand how our device affects endometriosis, and not just the pain that it causes, but is there a way we can affect the body's healing properties? We don't know that yet, but I think it's really interesting.
Especially because endometriosis, from my understanding, it actually can move throughout the body.
It moves. Yeah, absolutely. What, if anything, can our therapy help to alleviate? So if the body's experiencing less stress, can we actually help mitigate that? Because we don't actually know what causes endometriosis. Nobody actually knows that, which is wild. That's the first one. And then PCOS, perimenopause. Can we affect women? I'm perimenopausal and I have brain fog terribly on day one, and I wear my own body and don't have brain fog on day one. So I'm an N of one, of course. I'm an N of one. And so, but for me, those are the symptom reliefs that I see. I also went from being a pretty average normal bleeder to breakthrough bleeding, having to empty my disc every 3 hours, which is an abnormal amount of blood to lose.
Yeah.
And now with my own body, I don't do that anymore. I can wear a disc for 12 hours. And so what effects does that have? PCOS, we've talked about fibroids. Is there something with postpartum hemorrhaging? Is there some space in that we can create a solve for? And then eventually menopause. Things that are happening in your body through menopause, we still don't fully understand. We've just started, and the solutions and the thoughts on the horizon are pretty large and pretty hefty. But our clinical team and research team is really committed to fully understanding that. And we want to do it the right way. We want to have the right studies. We want to have the right people in the room. And so, yeah, lots of exciting things coming.
That is brilliant. And I absolutely love hearing that, because this is going to really impact so many women's day-to-day lives and how we show up. It is the absenteeism, the really presenteeism is so impacted by this. And I think we just don't speak about it because we've been told not to. And I think it does go back to what you shared. It also gives men another reason to make women lesser than. And so when you hear your founders and your clinical team really putting in this work to equalize and normalize and humanize women, I just love that. Absolutely amazing.
Thanks.
From your perspective too, you've spoke about your leadership and it seems like they are genuine and the most compassionate individuals. Tell me about your own experience with authenticity and coming into your space as a leader. And how has this evolved since your early career?
I've been really privileged through my life as I've looked back. I'm 40. I just turned 40 this year. And when you get to that milestone birthday, you're like, let's reflect on what's happened. I have been extremely privileged to have individuals in my life who saw something in me. I was a pretty hot-headed 20-year-old. I'm a firstborn, Enneagram 8, first generation college graduate, out there to prove myself. I got to prove that I belong at the table. I've just always been that person. And I had some really incredible leaders who found a lot of grace and patience with me as I worked through what that looked like and understood what that meant. It wasn't probably till my 30s that I realized I can be passionate and strong-willed, but also kind and generous and still be authentic to who I am. And I was privileged to work at some companies where I learned some really tough lessons about what that looked like. I had to lead teams that didn't necessarily want a leader or thought that someone else should have been the leader and had a lot of hard knock learnings, but some really beautiful things that came out of that. And then at the age of 37 and a half, I left a company and took a 7-month sabbatical and really created some boundaries for myself of what's really important to me, what really matters, what kind of leader do I actually want to be. I think I am the leader I am today because I was so fortunate to have incredible leadership demonstrated to me. And I'm so thankful that I was smart enough, or at least exposed enough to learn in those spaces what it means to be kind but clear, what it means to hold people accountable but with grace, what it means to demand more of myself and of people around me, but do that in a way that reminds them that they're capable. Those are the things that I want to authentically be to people. And sometimes I get it really right. And sometimes I get it really, really wrong. And I think my team today would be like, oh, there's probably a lot more wrong than right. But we approach it every day with a lot more grace. And then being in the startup world, you have to be a different kind of leader. I was telling someone today, in the next 4 weeks, I will be home 8 days. And that's not a lot for myself and my husband. And he's so supportive. And I'm so very thankful for that because some men just aren't super supportive of that lifestyle for their wife.
Right.
Luckily, we don't have kids. And so there's not that to have to worry about. But I think for me to be the kind of leader that's going to be effective, I have to be authentic to who I am. And I think at some point I had to be okay with being one, I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. But I can still affect change even in spaces where maybe I'm not your cup of tea as a leader.
Right. Acknowledging that and being able to take that time, right? That sabbatical to really reset and level set with yourself. And what does great look like for you? I think I've experienced it for myself. I am a high achiever. I also like to have a lot of irons in the fire. And equally, I think some days I need to really hit pause and hit stop entirely because you can't be everything to everybody. You're not going to answer everybody's problem or be everybody's solution. And we don't have to have everybody like us either, right?
And I'm okay with that.
It's taken me to be in my 40s to acknowledge that that's okay.
I grew up in the South, pretty religious. My mom is Korean. I grew up Southern Baptist. You should be kind. Women should be sweet. Girls should be sweet. Smile more. I don't know how many times I've been told to smile more. And I'm like, I'll smile when I have something to smile about. It's cool. I have a really bad resting bitch face. It's just what it is. And when people get to actually know me, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so nice. I'm like,
totally.
Yeah.
What did you think I wasn't?
I'm so confused. I've had former coworkers that I've invited into my home for dinners and things. And they would later on say to me when I first met you, I just thought, gosh, one, she scares the hell out of me. And I'm like, sure, that's a pretty common response. We were at a tea party, which is not really my thing, but it was a bridal shower or something. And she said, Amy, honestly, I really thought you didn't like me. And I was like, oh, what? And she's been in my home for dinner. Yeah. And I was like, I'm confused. Just why do you say that? She goes, well, I remember when I first started working at the company, you and I got into a fight. one I don't remember. And what people see as fighting, I usually
I know.
I love conflict, productive conflict. I'm like, let's go. And so
Yeah.
she said we had an argument, and I thought, oh gosh, Amy just really hates me. There's just no way that girl likes me. But then 2 weeks later, you invited me for Friendsgiving. And I was like, well, I like you. Whether we have a disagreement at work or not. And she said, no, I know that now. But she said, I've just never had a coworker who could openly disagree with someone and truly openly disagree, but then go have beers afterwards.
Right.
It's much more the way men operate.
Right,
I
exactly.
think. And I don't know if that's because most of my leadership that was so impactful in my life have been men. I prefer to be coached by men for a volleyball. My first real mentors were men. I don't know why that is, but I have brothers. I don't have any sisters. So I think I'm sure I've dropped it out. We can disagree and I can still like you as a person.
Yeah. I have a girlfriend who said, I don't just have resting bitch face. I have resting bitch soul.
Oh my God. Wait, that's hilarious. Oh, I may have to steal that. That's hilarious.
You totally can. I was in Vegas. My girlfriend is part of the crisis management team for the whole entire Clark County in Las Vegas, which huge job. And I said to her, Larea, how do you take care of yourself? And she was like, I don't.
Shoot.
I know. And so she's like, seriously, I was on a FBI documentary talking about crisis management in a major city. And they asked me that same question. And I told them, I tell people all day long, that's what they need to do. Yet I don't do it for myself. And we can all be guilty of that. And so for yourself, how do you balance the go, 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 the high expectations, the high desire to deliver and perform with taking care of yourself? It sounds like you're in a phenomenal situation with your leadership who support that and a woman's journey, but that's not for everybody. Not every company does that at all. So how do you take care of yourself? And what guidance would you have for other women who maybe are working within companies where they don't have that same leadership, oversight, and compassion?
The sabbatical that I referenced earlier was really where I, for the first time, did that. I left a company because, for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons was I was not myself. I had gained some weight. I was not healthy. I couldn't focus. I didn't know what I wanted next. And during that sabbatical, part of the boundaries that I set were one of the non-negotiables that was encouraged by a mentor for me to really set on was, I will no longer compromise my health or my sanity for a company. No company is worth that for me. I'm going to be traveling so much in the next 4 weeks. And so things I would normally do to reset and do the things that I want are not going to be available to me, but those are in seasons. And so we have to understand what that is.
And you have to make time for that. I mean, even going to these conferences, you're back to back all day long, but then on Thursday, you take that time for yourself to recuperate.
That's right. So for me, my ways of recuperating are fitness. So I lift most days. I walk 4 miles with a rucksack when I'm home. I get on a treadmill when I'm in a gym. I won't stay at a hotel that doesn't have a gym. It's a non-negotiable for me. Even when we were in London, both hotels I stayed at during that time had gyms and fitness centers. I picked up tennis when I left my job and started a sabbatical. And so I play anytime I'm home. I'm going to play 2 hours tomorrow. Anytime I'm home, I try to play as often as I can. And I don't move my tennis time for anything.
Love that.
For anything. And my company knows that. I own a small business as well on top of what I do with OhmBody. But I carve out those times and those are non-negotiables. Now, every once in a while, there's an urgent something because life happens and that's what we do. It has to be pretty dang urgent and has to happen in that moment for me to move time that I have carved out for myself. And that can look like that for anybody, regardless of whether you're in a company that gets it or not. We all have time and space to create it. And this idea of I don't have time and I can't do that. For me, this might sound really harsh, but I think that's an excuse. Anybody can find 15 minutes to recenter themselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's if you have kids, get up 15 minutes before kids do. And does that mean you sacrifice 15 minutes of sleep? Probably. But if you need that because you know you need to be recentered, if I don't move in a day, I'm really, really crabby. And my husband knows that. And so I work really, really hard to create those spaces. I also work really hard to connect with people that matter to me. I think you make time for things that are a priority to you. And I just don't buy into this idea that I just never have time because you do have time. Now, do you have time every day? Maybe not. But you do have the time if you'll reprioritize that. And it takes discipline. That's not easy. I'm
Yeah.
not sitting here and saying that's the easiest thing in the world to do and you should just do it. And so I want to have a lot of empathy for people who struggle to that. This is from my therapist. She very much tells me, in order for you to be the best version of you, you have to commit to being the best version of you.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that.
We need to hear that because we've been conditioned to behave well, to smile more, to not complain, to do all the things. And someone on this stage at Health even said that culturally, women have been meant to behave and you sit and look pretty and you stay in the back room quiet. You don't speak up. And I've never been that way. Maybe some people don't appreciate that, but I am not going to change that because I think it's so important because we do need to be advocates for people. That's even just one reason why I started Redefine Her because I think it's just so important to raise the voices of women. We've been shuttered for too long. We can go down this banging on the drum, but we're 51% of the population. And men would not exist without women, just like plain and simple. But as you said, just taking care of yourself. And I think really committing to that. And it's like even stimulating your vagus nerve with humming or singing or taking 5 minutes in the kitchen to dance, put on some music. Find joy. Find joy wherever you can because you've got to serve yourself. And as cliche as it might be, fill your own cup up. You've got to do it.
Can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Right, right. We like to pass the mic forward, and it sounds like you guys have had obviously Series A investment and then grant funding, and you're on your way to the next iteration of amazing for OhmBody. But tell me, if you had the chance to convince a billionaire, Bill Gates, Bezos, Zuckerberg, any of these big earners here to take on one global initiative in women's health, what would it be and why?
Oh, gosh. I think if we stick to the theme of today around menstruation, it's about quality menstrual care and education because it impacts every single woman. Fertility is hot. Everyone wants to talk about fertility and egg freezing, but fertility is not a pathway for every woman. I didn't want to be a mom. And I have no desire to have children. Could I have? I have no idea. Never tried. While it's such a big thing, and I have so many friends who have gone through IVF and an infertility journey that is unique to them, and some have found pathways forward and some have not, and some have been devastated by multiple miscarriages. It is an issue. What's unique about menstruation is that it impacts every single female.
Perfect response because there are a lot of companies that are doing work around education with periods and young women, even AmpFlow, getting periods into public spaces. But if you could think of in generating a ton of funding and commitment to advance that forward, maybe having awareness and education around your period much younger might help to solve more of these fertility issues.
100%. You just hit the nail on the head. And that's for us at OhmBody. One of the reasons adolescents are going to be a part of this conversation is we want to have a viable option to manage heavy menstrual bleeders in girls who are too young to be taking synthetic hormones.
Yes, exactly. Because that's not the right choice for everyone.
For most. We'll just say that. For most adolescents, adding a birth control to their regimen because they're having menstrual bleeder is not setting them up for success for their fertility journey should they choose that someday. And to your point, I just mentioned I have tons of friends working through infertility. Most of those friends have been on birth control, hormonal birth control since they were 15. And not all for heavy menstrual bleeding, some for painful periods, some for acne. It was the pop-in solution for everything when we were teenagers. And that was, again, a pill that was not even tested on women. And so we have inklings and we have thoughts and hypotheses around what that's done to fertility for our generation.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody would say it had zero effect on our ability to get pregnant.
No, I don't even think they would correlate that. For the big investors out there funding menstrual research, and especially in young women, let's do it. Let's do it, people. Amy, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your leadership. This has been a great conversation, and you've really reminded us what bold, compassionate innovation looks like with OhmBody, and really just bringing your authentic self to whatever you're building. Congratulations again on the trial launch coming this spring. Huge milestone for OhmBody, and I can't wait to see the journey and what comes out of all of this. And really, to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this first season of Redefine Her. From founder journeys to funding challenges, we've explored what it means to build in women's health. And it's building in a system that was not designed with us in mind. And there are so many incredible humans doing great work, and we need to continue that work. So I appreciate the fact that women are changing that, and that we have men allies, arm in arm, step by step, helping to make these changes possible. Great conversation today, and thank you for being part of this story.
Thanks, Brenda. This was really great.
Yes, thank you as well. Amy, thank you so much for your honesty, your vision, and your fierce belief in what's possible when we stop ignoring women's pain and start designing for it. Well, listeners, that is the close of season 1 of Redefine Her. And what an amazing season it was. From telehealth companies to precision medicine to stories that have shaped us, from solo founders to science-backed breakthroughs. Redefine Her has had many amazing guests on. Women who are in the daily grind of building something that matters. And I want to say thank you to all of my guests, and thank you to all of my listeners. The show is meant for every woman who's pushing against a system that just wasn't built with us in mind, and for all of the men who are our allies in making this happen. So thank you for tuning in. We're planning our next season, so if you know of anyone building in health tech or women's health specifically, please send this their way or make the introduction. We would love to get them on season 2 of Redefine Her. There are so many amazing women out there that are building with women, our children, our daughters, our sisters, all in mind. We really need to continue elevating these stories. Until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing and walking this path with us, step by step, arm in arm. To ladies everywhere, keep redefining what's possible. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Redefine Her, where we explore the bold voices, transformative ideas, and untold stories reshaping the future of women's health, wellness, and the technology that makes it all happen. I'm your host, Brenda Armstrong. Redefine Her is produced by Taryn Long and proudly sponsored by CH2 Solutions, powering innovation with purpose. If today's conversation moved you, challenged you, or sparked a new idea, we'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep redefining what's possible.